The governor's plan to put more money into schools, but not everyone is on board.
It's a short-term Band-Aid that leaves a long-term scar. It's not more money for schools. It is clearly not more money. It is less money mathematically for schools. It's just sooner money.
And a much different story, a rail connecting Tucson and Phoenix. How likely is it?
Get people out of their cars, using less gas, less pollution, win-win for everybody.
This is Arizona Week. Governor Doug Ducey visited Tucson on Tuesday. On his agenda, more money for schools, Arizona's relationship with Mexico, and his upcoming trip to Washington. Here's my one-on-one interview with the governor. Governor, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Lorraine.
You're coming down here to Tucson talking about education. Let's talk about your plan to put more money into schools. How do you do that?
Well, first, it's great to be in Tucson today. This is my 10th trip to Tucson since we've been sworn in, and it's just great to be back in southern Arizona. We are talking about our education funding idea, and this is to put $2 billion additional dollars into K-12 education over the next 10 years. And it really is just through better management of our state land trust. Many Arizonans don't realize that we have a state land trust with a value of $5.1 billion, and it is intended to benefit K-12 education. So what we want to do is just increase the funding formula from where it is today to 10% over the next 5 years and 5% for the 5 years after. And this will bring $2.2 billion additional into K-12 education. And we think it's a terrific way to bring resources to our classrooms and our students without raising taxes.
Initially, it sounded like a great idea. You had a lot of support, and then the devil was in the details, and some people started raising concerns. There are concerns that this relies on interest and markets and how the economy is moving. Are you concerned?
Well, I think that this is a good idea, and we used very conservative numbers here. I think you have to remember that I've been the state treasurer for the past 4 years. Before that, I was in the private sector. And I know that government isn't a business, but I think we can bring business-like principles to better operate our government. And that's what this idea is. We have this asset of over $5 billion, and those that don't want to touch it are using examples like, if we don't spend this money, it'll be worth $10 billion 10 years from now. And my answer is, to what end? This money exists to benefit K-12 education. And we're going to be able to take these dollars, put them into our K-12 system, and we will have a larger endowment 10 years from now. But the objective of governments is not to build large savings accounts. It's to serve its citizens. And in this case, this is the students inside our classrooms and our teachers, and our state has needs now. And that's why I want to act on this.
There are some projections this could send the state into a fiscal cliff, I think I read.
Well, the only reason they can come to projections of a fiscal cliff is because we are adding so much additional money into K-12 education. So this is really a 10-year plan and a 5-year solution for K-12. And I'm willing to work with the legislature if they want to help round some of these numbers so that there's more consistency and predictability. But what I don't want to hear is that we're not going to add this money into K-12.
You have to get the legislature on board, then the voters. So when is the timetable for this?
Well, this is something we're working on every day because we do need to work with the legislature, and they're out of session. I'm talking to the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, and other leaders in each caucus, and we have a plan. It will unfold over the next several weeks, and we're excited for what's possible.
Treasurer Jeff DeWitt says this may require congressional approval. Is that true?
You know, we've had this reviewed by several different law firms, including in-house, and we believe that if this is passed through the House and the Senate, goes to the ballot box and passed by the voters, we'll be able to inject this money into K-12 education, and we have high confidence on that.
There's a very expensive lawsuit pending. Some people might say, why not figure that out first and then move on?
We would So they're not mutually exclusive of each other. But the first idea is the state land trust dollars that we'd like to move into K-12. If we can be a part of the solution on this lawsuit, we would like that. I said in my state of the state, settle this lawsuit. It's time to start paying teachers and stop paying lawyers. The lawsuit is on appeal. We're going to move forward with the state land trust plan.
On that note, Superintendent Diane Douglas has said $400 million for teachers. Where does that money come from?
Well, I think we would agree that we need more resources into K-12. Our idea brings $2.2 billion over the course of 10 years. Whatever monies are going to be needed can come from those monies, and the $10 billion in total dollars, local, state, and federal, that we're spending on an annual basis right now.
You've taken a lot of heat from people who say you're taking money from education. How do you sell the voters if this should go to the voters?
Well, I've listened to the voters. The voters have been talking to me for over a year on the campaign trail and for 9 months as governor. When I'm going to bring to the voters available dollars that will go into our base formula to support our students, to support our teachers, be guided to the classroom, and to do it without raising taxes, I think we've got a winning idea.
You were at Alta Vista High School today. What is it about that school that the governor managed to come to visit them?
Well, Alta Vista is doing a lot of things right on a number of fronts. It's just exciting to be inside a school with excellent leadership, great teachers inside the classroom, and they're overcoming obstacles of poverty and free and reduced lunch and achieving excellence. So I think it's an example that I'd like to recreate across the state, in every part of the state. And we're inside schools in counties from Pima to last week in Coconino, seeing schools of all different types that are performing. One, it's great for me to be able to talk to those leaders inside those schools, to hear from those parents and listen to their concerns, and then really see what differentiates those schools so we can do more of it in more places around the state.
The principal of that school is on your Classrooms First initiative. What does that say about your initiative? How is it moving forward?
Our initiative is moving forward, so part of this is resources that we want to bring to the schools, but it's not just resources, it's also reforms. I mentioned the total dollars of spending in K-12 education, over $10 billion. How do we better and more effectively spend this money so we support the students inside the classrooms and we have the proper amount of bureaucracy that we need, but not too much?
There are parents who are probably losing faith in the public school system. What do you say to them?
Well, the first thing I would say is I hear your concerns, and we have been listening, and we're bringing resources. We do know how to educate a child in the state of Arizona. We have 3 of the top 10 public high schools in the nation. No other governor in the country has that bragging right. But the issues that are affecting American education are also affecting Arizona. We know how to fix this. It's resources plus reforms and a focus on results for our kids, and that's what you're going to see out of this administration.
And on that note, the lowest spending per student in the country.
Spending is not the measure of success. If it were, Chicago, Illinois, Newark, New Jersey, Detroit, Michigan, Washington, D.C. would be the best K-12 systems in the country. But they're not. They're among the worst. It's effective spending. So we are going to lead the nation in the fresh resources, the new dollars we're going to bring to K-12, but we're also going to have those focused on results for our kids and teachers inside these classrooms.
We'll move from education to Mexico. Sonora has a new governor. What do you envision for the future with her?
Well, Mexico is our largest trading partner times 4. This is our sister state on the southern border, and Angela and I were down there over the weekend for the inauguration on Sunday, and it's this idea of focusing on cross-border trade, focusing on the relationship and partnership that we've had over the years, and also focusing on ways that we can best communicate so we have the best public safety for all our citizens.
You were gearing up for a trip to meet the Pope. How did you swing that visit?
Well, we were lucky enough to get an invite, and it's not every day that the White House calls and invites you to visit with the Pope and meet him on the trip. So we're excited, and Angela and I are looking forward to representing Arizona.
Any idea what you'll tell the Pope?
Well, I'll be listening as the Pope is talking, and just to meet him would be a great honor.
Governor, thank you for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the people of Southern Arizona?
Well, we're going to continue to focus on Southern Arizona. This is my 10th trip since being elected, and if I am lucky enough to visit with the Pope, I'll ask him for prayers for all of our citizens.
Governor, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
At the top of the interview, you heard the governor say his school funding plan is a top priority. But Arizona's treasurer says there are major flaws with the idea. Here's Christopher Conover and State Treasurer Jeff DeWitt.
Thanks for coming in and sitting down with us. You and the governor have a disagreement over his plan to fund education out into the future using the state land trust. As treasurer, you oversee that trust. What's your disagreement?
The disagreement is, the good news is we have agreement that it is the time to figure out the school's finances and what to do to remedy the situation there. The disagreement is over how we do that. So the governor proposed a plan to take 10% of the net asset value out of the school's endowment trust over a 5-year period, drop that to another 5% for the remaining 5, and right now it pays 2.5%. The problem with that is it's not legal based on the terms of an endowment trust. So it's not an investment account, it's not a savings account, and we have to be conscious of the fact that this is in a trust in perpetuity. And so the whole premise of a trust in perpetuity is intergenerational equity forever. So keeping that in mind, we cannot spend any of the principal. My main opposition came from the fact that this plan would spend down the principal in terms of it could spend up to half of the principal that's in the roughly now $5 billion trust, whereas we're not allowed to spend a penny of it. So that was the main point of the opposition. It goes from there. It's not new money for schools. This money has been around for 100 years growing. One of the things is if we could have touched this money, I'm sure a previous governor or a previous legislature would have already been able to take it, and they've tried dozens of times to do so, and it's never been successful. So looking at this as the way to fix our school's funding problem just isn't the right place to go.
The state land trust was put in place, as you said, to fund public schools in Arizona. It happened around the time of statehood. The governor's plan would take a vote of the people, right, because we have to change the law, change the way things are handled. I know the argument is, well, that's what the land is there for, so if the people agree to change it, what's the problem? Does it come down to if the legal question is solved by a vote of the people, does it become a fiduciary problem?
Well, there's clearly a fiduciary problem. As far as the legalities of it, currently it's unconstitutional to do based on the Arizona Constitution. And so it has to go to the legislature, get referred to a vote of the people, and then at that point, it takes a vote of the people to amend the Constitution. But then it also has to get approved by Congress, because this goes back to the Enabling Act. In the late 1700s, when the Founding Fathers set up the country, and they said, okay, future states that come in are going to use this land and the proceeds of these lands to educate children. So we're never allowed to spend principal, even going back to the original way the trust was founded. And since this plan does so, we would then have to get Congress to allow us to do so. And when you get this multi-step problem and you say, okay, why would we go through all this? They might have a special election that's going to cost Arizona taxpayers an additional $10 million for something that, even if it's successful, can get a couple $100 million a year into schools and then cost us $8 billion over the next 40 years, cost us $87 billion by Arizona's 200th birthday. So this is something where, that's why I keep saying it's a short-term Band-Aid that leaves a long-term scar. It's not more money for schools. It is clearly not more money. It is less money mathematically for schools. It's just sooner money. And so it's the equivalent, I guess, to put it in easy terms, of if in your first year of retirement you cashed out half of your 401k and you spent it on a nice car. Well, you're driving a nice car around and it looks like you have more money. But what happens the next year when the money runs out? Now you have less money forever. That's the equivalent of this plan.
You are the treasurer. Education's not your full purview, obviously, but you're around the Capitol, an elected official. Do you have any thoughts on if this plan doesn't work, or a better way, since you get to see the checkbook every day, to fund education?
Yeah, and so I do care about education. I have 3 school-age children. My wife was a public school teacher for over 10 years, and so I'm very concerned about the funding of our education system, and that's why I don't want to harm us forever by doing a plan like this. Quite frankly, we can just settle the lawsuit is the best plan. It gets more money into schools. It takes the lawsuit off the table, and it's what the business community is clamoring for. This lawsuit hanging over our heads is really hurting. There was an article recently about 2 big businesses that didn't want to relocate to Arizona and skipped over us and went to Colorado because the way that we're viewed with this lawsuit hanging over our heads. So I think settling the lawsuit, we have the extra revenue that's come in this year. We could do it and still lower taxes. We could settle the lawsuit right now and not raise taxes. So I don't know why we don't go down that path. Let's just settle the lawsuit. The trust remains intact, and really the schools get a win-win. They have both pools of money then.
This opposition from you as a Republican, the governor is a Republican, has caused a little bit of a political dust-up around Phoenix and around the Capitol. Were you surprised by this little dust-up?
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I'm just having a policy disagreement, and I come from the business world. I'd never run for anything in my life. And so politics is very new to me, and quite frankly, I don't really care for politics. So I'm just trying to do the best mathematical thing I can for Arizona. One of the reasons that I got involved in politics is I'm concerned about the bad math choices that our politicians keep making for us, and one of the reasons that our country is $19 trillion in debt. We keep dumping our bad decisions on future generations and spending money of the people that aren't old enough yet to vote, and I don't think that's fair. So I'm standing up and being a voice for mathematical sanity and fiscal conservatism and saying we just can't go and spend money we don't have, when especially there's a better way to do it, and we have a better way to do it. And the other thing we can do, even in terms of this trust, to make it perform better, is sell more state land. That's better for our business community to get that land in private hands. It's better because now we have a lot more businesses and everything paying into the property tax system and spread that out. So the best thing for schools is to keep the trust intact and to sell more state land. We just can't bust the trust financially by taking so much money out of the principal.
At the center of the debate between the governor and the treasurer are the students. On Tuesday, Governor Ducey visited Alta Vista High School, an A-rated charter school for the last 2 years. Alicia Alvarez, the principal at Alta Vista High School, and Maritza Mata, a senior here at Alta Vista High School. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Well, to start with you, Ms. Alvarez, tell me about what it was like having the governor come to your school.
An amazing experience. I think not only for me, but just to see the students and the teachers and the entire staff be so proud of what we've accomplished at Alta Vista, truly an honor.
Tell me about why he decided to come to this school.
When I received the call from the governor's office that they would be visiting Alta Vista, they really look at statistics and what you've done with the community that you serve. And some of the statistics that they focused on were our daily attendance rate. We run a 97% attendance rate. Our graduation rate, four-year graduation rate, is 81% last year. And then taking a look at our label. So when you look at A schools in Arizona, we fall under an alternative category. And the reason being is not all of our students start like Maritza did their freshman year. We have many students that come to us deficient in credits. But the ability to be able to show not only growth, but to show academic success with our students is really what caught the attention. It's the big question of how is this being done at this school? And so I think that's what really attracted their attention. The other thing is that we talked about some of the things that we're doing at Alta Vista. And one of the things that we are relaunching, if you will, is our post-secondary education initiative, which was started back in 2006, I want to say. And we were really, really focused every year on making sure that all of our students not only had a plan after high school, but had been guided towards that plan. And I think the last couple of years we've lost that focus, so I've brought a team together again, a committee, and that's really our focus. What we have found in the past couple of years, though, is that many of our students might need some financial assistance to be able to get there. And or parents need to be brought in for more individual assistance with financial aid. So that's part of our post-secondary education initiative. That wasn't the reason why the governor chose Alta Vista. It truly had to do with the academic success. But when he was here and he asked, what is it about your school besides the academics? And I think it's that. It's working with students individually, knowing where they're going, guiding them, having a plan, making GPA an important factor of their education, making sure at starting their freshman year, they know what a grade point average means to them in the future.
Maritza, you're a senior here and this is a charter school. Why did you choose to come here?
To be honest, I didn't personally choose it. My mother did after an older sibling had graduated, and she was like really impressed with like the structure and the instruction. So she thought that it was in my best interest to come and follow my brother's footsteps.
Your principal just said that things are done a little differently here, that there's a lot of involvement. Is that true? Do you feel that from your teachers?
I really do. Like for some reason, I feel that these teachers actually really care whether you're doing good. They, I would like to, the only way I could say is hold your hand, but not to the point of dependency, but they really make sure that you're doing good and that you're doing your assignments and that you are on your way to a successful path, not just passing.
How did it feel differently coming from other schools, like your middle school?
Oh my gosh, there's more enforcement here. It's easier to talk to the teachers. They enforce the attendance policies, the dress code, and they just really make sure that you're doing good and that you're just coming to school.
On to different news now. A passenger rail connecting Tucson and Phoenix. In the last 2 years, the Arizona Department of Transportation has collected more than 10,000 surveys, and this week hosted 3 public hearings for the study, and the response has been positive.
Tucson and Phoenix is just, it operates so much as one economic area, one basically megapolitan where a lot of people, including myself, work in Phoenix and Tucson. I have an office in Phoenix, I have one in Tucson. I've been driving back and forth for 20 years. I can almost do that drive with my eyes closed. Now ADOT has done a lot in improving I-10 where they can from 2 to 3 lanes, made it very safe, but I sure as heck would like to take my laptop out or my cell phone out and do some work as I'm traveling from Tucson to Phoenix.
Cautiously, my organization is optimistic that this could be a good thing because even though we're a conservation organization and my job in particular is working with wildlife and wildlife corridors, we feel that as population grows, and it will, there's nothing to stop that from happening right now, so we want to be able to work with agencies to make sure that wildlife and our habitats are protected and integrated with the growing need for transportation. And light rail is one of those solutions that we're really excited to see how that could be working out and maybe potentially negating the need for an I-11 bypass, possibly.
The Arizona Passenger Rail Corridor study started with 150 routes and has since been narrowed down to 2 and a no-build alternative. Here's Mike Keys from ADOT.
We're in the study phase right now. Where we are right now is we've released a draft environmental impact statement, and we're asking the public to provide comments and input on the recommendations that we have in that document.
Tell me a little bit about what it would look like, what it would feel like for people in these communities.
Well, what we're thinking of recommending is a passenger rail system between Phoenix and Tucson. That system would operate express service and local service if it was constructed, which would mean that somebody might get on at Tucson and get on an express train and maybe make one stop to in Pinal County, and maybe the next stop is Sky Harbor. The technology that we made the assumption that we'd be using would operate comfortably at about 125 miles an hour.
You've had one public comment, you'll have others this week. What are people saying?
Well, some people are concerned with the cost and where would the money come from. We had a meeting in Phoenix last night and had a pretty good turnout. We did hear some comments of people who feel that instead of studying a connection between Phoenix and Tucson, maybe we should be studying between Phoenix and Los Angeles. We've had other people talk about how this type of a system would be very good for the state and would connect our 2 metro areas more seamlessly and be a rally cry for a strong economy and more diversity in the state. So it's all over the map.
Some people may wonder what's the timeline look like? What is the reality of something like this actually happening?
Well, the reality is really based on where we can find the funding, because what we're doing now is the planning stage. We're looking at the feasibility. Is it really feasible to provide passenger rail between our 2 metro areas? What type of ridership would we project to get? How could it improve the economy? But we're only doing the planning phase now. The funding, which the cost estimates range from $5 to $8 billion for a system like this, the funding hasn't been determined, and it's really, we want to get the word out that this is a feasible system. It's something that is a alternate to Interstate 10 and could help have more reliable travel between our 2 metro areas. But it's up to the public and elected officials and maybe even the legislature to start debating, is this something that everybody really wants to fund, and where would that funding come from?
What are typically some of the funding sources for a project like this one?
Well, all passenger rail systems are usually subsidized in some way with public funding. Other areas have raised sales tax or created rail authorities where they have taxing authority for property taxes or taxing businesses. Other systems have been a combination of private and public funds. So there is the opportunity for entertaining private equity into a system like this, and they may be then paid back by collecting ticket fares or collecting revenue fees from development that happens along the corridor. So most likely some sort of public funding would need to be involved, but there is the option to consider private investment also.
The planning phase, can you talk about it a little bit more and describe what it looks like, what you have done thus far?
Oh, sure. So we started out this study with just the idea of connecting our two metropolitan areas with a high-capacity transportation corridor. And we looked at all kinds of alternatives. We looked at, is it efficient to connect our two communities with bus? Should we be widening out various highways? Or should we be looking at other systems like a rail system? Once we determined that rail is a feasible alternative to I-10, we then looked at 7 different alternatives of how we could connect Phoenix to Tucson by going through different communities like Casa Grande and Maricopa and Coolidge and those places. And we compared all those alternatives against each other and went out to the public and got a lot of input. We've had over 10,000 surveys filled out from the public about what they expect from a system like this and where they might use it to access. And from that, we came down to 2 final alternatives, which connect Phoenix to Tucson, and they're highlighted in the environmental document that we have out for public comment now. And then the environmental document actually suggests a recommendation, which is what we call our yellow alternative. And that would be a route that goes through Coolidge, Queen Creek, and into Phoenix through the East Valley of Maricopa County.
Something like this could potentially change the landscape of a town like Coolidge.
It could, yeah, and most of the smaller communities, or I should say all the communities that are potentially along the route are very excited about a system like this coming to their community. We've had meetings with communities like Coolidge and talked about how their community could develop around a passenger rail station, and they're very excited about bringing new businesses and more density to their communities and having connections to smaller bus routes and things that could shuttle people around their communities. There's a lot of excitement with this idea.
And that's our program. From all of us at Arizona Public Media, I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for joining us.